ありがとうございます。はい、それではですね、今回のフォーラムもいよいよ最後のセッションとなりました。
Thank you, everyone.
4つ目のセッションですね。
We are going to start the final session of today's forum.
今回のフォーラムの企画、キュレーターを務めていただいて、
We're going to invite the curator who lives in Berlin. And she's doing the experience designer. And Saki-san, please start. Thank you. During the session, just like the first session, that we're going to talk about the clothing and eating and living. And animism close to the fashion and materialism. So based on the fashion, and we are going to deep think about the body and nature and relationship. And let's welcome the body Raquel Buj, founder of Ball Studio, and Mr. Mizuno Daijiro-san. Can you see them? Raquel especially specializes in fashion, and then especially taking care of the materials and bringing materials from different places. And also the biomaterial. She is designing the new, imagining different materials. And then Mr. Mizuno, he is a fashion designer, but also he's doing the research and doing the project related to the circular fashion. So today we are going to hear what there are activities and works related to the experimental skins and body material and nature. So Raquel, hello, are you ready?
Yes, hello. First of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm learning a lot from the other speakers and the other conference I'm listening to it. And also I'm super glad of being sharing this moment with Mizuno Daijiro that, I mean, it's super important for me, its work. So I'm going to start sharing my presentation to talk about this topic. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the skin, our skin. I understand I'm a fashion designer, but I'm also an architect. And I understand fashion not only as a garment built with textile, but also as a skin. In one hand, we build our own skins, design skins around our body. As a designers or fashion designers, for me, we have our own skin that it's like the most extended, say, organ in our body. But we build and design artificial our skins around our body. In all these skins or envelopes, we can find architecture, nature, cities, but we also find our most intimate built artificial skin that is fashion. For me, it's very important this concept of a skin in fashion, because I don't understand it only from a metaphorical way, but also as a skins of relations with nature, or what we understand by nature, and the environment that it's around us, and also trying to dissolve this idea of a skin and make it like an extended skin of connection. For that, in the studio, I work with, and my team, we work with the different brands of materials because we try to do this connection with the environment, with the nature, with the other non-human species through materials, through the work with experimental skins, body, nature, and materials. We work with a bunch of materials that it can go from natural materials, but also artificial materials, as well as for with a lot of techniques, more artisanal craft techniques, but also more, let's say, digital technological techniques, digital fabrication and biofabrication. For me, and this topic we are discussing today, I would like to share the works that have to do more with architecture, body architecture understood from the non-human perspective, and try to build these fashion architectures, trying to build a gap to create new symbiotic relationships with non-human species. That's why I'm going to talk more about some projects that we did in a collection called Nidos, where we tried, it was presented in the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week in Madrid, but also in different exhibitions and events. It was a special project because some kind of, it was making a connection between the things that are important in the studio, that is this relation with architecture, fashion, and nature. And for me, the nests are these key points because they are these intimate second skins, maybe the most intimate skins for these, maybe for the birds and other and also insects, that let's create a very close envelope and very intimate. And this envelope, it's built with nature and maybe with an expanded understanding of nature that is not only natural elements, but also artificial elements, let's say the materiality that it's around us. So this project was kind of a research of how, what could we learn from other species, like these insects or these birds, and try to make it more intimate, to make it more in a speculative way, design a fashion speculative second skin. We tried to learn from these species, for example, from the weaver, and how they build with their body and with their beaks, this copper, let's say with this, they use these branches or other natural elements to build great architects, these beautiful envelopes. We tried to kind of emulate this, let's say, body working, hand working, not with our beak, but with our hands, and try to maybe, let's say, collect what we have in our environment. I live in a city, so maybe I don't have I have more access maybe to copper wires, recycled copper wires sometimes, that to branches or some other natural elements. So we try to build, to do this building by doing with our hands, to create, let's say, this second skin, a close second skin through with our body, with these collected materials that are part of our nature, that in this case is more, let's say, artificial nature around our cities, and work it all with our hands, trying to do a close connection between our hands and materiality, and learn from it. Also thinking in the fashion, thinking in this garment, in this dress, that also a volume that could maybe incorporate not only human bodies but non-human bodies. Why not? Also going beyond this, we were also trying to look at these other species, like the bird turpial, that in its work, let's say, they collect not only natural elements like feathers, but also artificial human elements like plastics, that they even collected and select them from their color, maybe trying to build these nets, these, let's say, like these envelopes, like to maybe to attract their mates, of course that, but also I guess in a beautifully way that it's maybe understood in their body, you know, how to work with materiality, like the practice and the experience that they have, like from working, no, like it's a learning by doing, let's say. So trying to emulate this. And like to dissolve this limit between what is natural and what is artificial, we try to create this envelope that in one hand collects feathers, fallen feathers, naturally fallen feathers from birds, but also we collected different plastics from the screens of the computers, recycled, that we collect them and digitally we laser cutted it, trying to build like this envelope that is between the iridescent colors, but also the very natural colors of the, also iridescent colors are a color that is in nature, but also mixing with the feathers, trying to create this like kind of artificial and natural envelope that is like exactly on the limit, no? Also like it's like a kind of a very attractive moment, no? Maybe captured in this fashion garment. We also wanted to incorporate these learnings from these birds or insects in the body, trying to incorporate not only to emulate, let's see, to do a mimetic work from nature, but also maybe to work more from the things that are there and we don't see. For example, from the behaviors of some animals like this velutina, that it's a wasp that builds an amazing nest. They bite the wood trunks, the wood trunks. They bite them and mix like this material with their saliva in their mouths and creates these envelopes and these nests. And we wanted like to kind of make it visible what is invisible, that is the behavior behind of this wasp, that in like let's say accumulating this materiality and sticking it together to create this like a mass, no, like this mass that is the nest. So we kind of work more with computational design, grasshopper, and this kind of like to try to materialize the behavior that was behind these animals in, let's say, like collecting this materiality of wood and putting it together, stick it together. And we like do this parametrical design, and we put it a 3D printer to work. And like to generate this materiality. We work with different filaments, recycled wood filaments, flexible, rigid filaments. But we wanted to make some kind of like the machine, in this case, the 3D printed, make it more like also like giving also some kind of let's say animal characteristics or organic characteristics, so that the 3D printer wasn't like something perfect. The finish we were looking for wasn't perfect, but was more organic, was more nature. So we also work over the filament, melting it, also like when the 3D printing did errors, we like kind of like these mistakes, because are also mistakes like that are also natural, and we try to incorporate like these mistakes, these filaments that are not perfect, into the design, and also melt it, like if it was like the material of the 3D printer was like kind of also chewed by this animal, kind of making a relation between what is a machine and what is a wasp, no? In this case, an animal, and try to make them both work around our body to create like this second skin that is not directly the shape of a nest, but it's like trying to materialize the behavior of a wasp. Also, we wanted to go like more also inside this nest, thinking and not only like in the formal, in the material like appearance, but also in the experience of, in this case, of being a tent caterpillar, of being inside a tent caterpillar nest. We look at these incredible creations where they like build with this silk from their mouths, like tying them around these branches. And we try to work with the fallen branches, because in this project this project at the end was maybe like a research project that was without. I'm not a biologist, but I like to learn a lot from other species, because I think there is a lot of learning. So we try to emulate some behaviors, like that was very important to collect materiality from our surrounding, and make it ours, no? Make it more like a skin, no? That's why we collected these fallen branches, and we try to emulate like all these textures that are not perfect, but are so beautiful. And we created these molds for different branches from each one, trying to emulate like this. Let's say not perfect appearance of the branches, and create like, let's say, like a corset, like an interior space where our body to be inside, to feel like this experience that this tent caterpillar can have, no, inside this nest, but to emulate this nature with artificial materials, like in this case, this resin, epoxy resin, but also try to emulate this, like not perfection, like a lot of textures, like texturized materiality that we have around us. And it's very interesting I have worn this garment, and it gives you like a different perspective, some kind of being like around nature, but also a powerful sensation. It's difficult to explain without experiencing it, but it's very interesting to be inside this garment. It gives you also another scale that is a mix between a human scale and a non-human scale. It gives like the way of walking. Also, you have to walk in a different way, because let's say like the weights of the garment is there to compensate it. And I mean, it's super interesting to have the experience of it. Also, in this like learning from other species, and like the architecture of other species, and how we can like make it closer to our body, I was like super interested in also like, let's say, in the more like organic materiality. Let's say the saliva, the wood, the petals, the flowers, the leaves, and the branches, the mud, and some kind of like working with it with something that is not totally, let's say, like dry, no, like giving this sensation of something that is not static, but that it's transforming, that is not a perfect finish, but that it's like changing the materiality, and maybe like it's growing some kind of. And we work with, got inspired by these weaver ants that they create like this super amazing nest, collecting, grabbing different leaves, collecting leaves, and they build with this kind of silk, this kind of threads with their saliva. And like they build like this structure. So we kind of wanted to work with the leaves itself, creating like a laboratory kind of biomaterials with leaves, using the leaves as a mold, but also using the leaves as materials, combining it with, let's say, bio-based materials like agar bio-based materials, or spirulina, that it's an algae, or gelatin, let's say like bioplastic that are not made from petroleum, that are made from bio-based materials, and that are cooked the same that you can cook at your house, but you can also cook a biomaterial that it's a bioplastic that doesn't come from petroleum, but all come from, let's say, biopolymers that you can find in nature. So we could work with this, also working with the leaves as a collected material. All of these leaves also were collected from the ground, but also all the leftovers that we generated in this kind of laboratory, we also work with them, like mixing it with other materials and trying to create no leftovers, no, from our research. So we created this kind of natural bio-based leaves made from falling collected leaves, no? Trying to create also, yeah, it's interesting, like this idea of creating some natural material, but you cook it, but also the base are fallen leaves, no, are also a natural material as well. So we try to sew these kind of leaves collected, bio-based, done manually, with also different, with felt, with wool, with natural wool, but also trying to emulate what I was saying at the beginning of this nest of the avoceta, trying to create this kind of saliva materiality or emulate it, no, with the biomaterials. No? Something that it's still even wet and can still grow, no? Because if someone has worked with biomaterials or bioplastic, it's some of them are like very sensitive to water, so they can change, they can move, they can even mold, can grow on it, no? And I think that's something interesting, no? Like the garment, it's something alive itself. Going beyond this idea of what is changing, what is kind of alive, what is in material nature that is not static, we also had a look on this avoceta nest. Those are some nests built by bees, by a solitary bee that like bites the flower petals and like sticks them with mud and saliva and create, in my opinion, these beautiful envelopes, these beautiful homes that are for the growing of the larvae. For me, it was like super interesting, the idea of maybe I don't know, but for me, I don't know if they have like aesthetically like a point of view, but I think so, because maybe like for the reproduction and for like the caring of the larvae, they need it to be something that is done with care, and it's a care space. It's a space for caring, and also it's a beautiful space, no? And I think that this part of what is beautiful, sometimes we don't talk about it, no? When we talk about what other let's say insects or birds do in their nest, I mean, it's obviously that it's beautiful, but we don't talk about this aesthetical, let's say, point of view that these non-human species have, no? And for me, it was important to collect and like to try to emulate this process. And we collected also flower petals, fallen flower petals, and like start working again very meticulously with our hands, like sticking it to shoulder pads and other pads that we recycle from, let's say, body pads, to these structures that are soft structure. That for me also these nests are soft in the way they are built. because also they are care space and also in the shape. So we trying to emulate this idea of collecting these petals. We work with silicons and also with biosilicons, and we try to creating these structures, repeat these soft structures that are like convex around the body, and create like this beautiful kind of spaces of soft, of care, and also of changing, time changing over the around the body, because the color of the petals are changing. This garment is not the same now that when it was done, no? Because the color and like the structure, it's also changing. But I think that's also interesting, no? To get not only to the final results, but also to the process, but also to the time, no? To the pass of time. Also for us, it was very important to think in the nest not only as an individual garment, not to create an individual garment, but to think in these skins, in these nest skins, are spaces for relation. Of course, spaces for relation with materiality, as I'm like explaining in all these slides, but of course, directly spaces for relation with other human and non-human species. I learned a lot from these nests that are social weaver nests that are built in different structures, existing structures, artificial structures like this electricity structure, but also in the wood, in the trees. And they build these spaces not only for them and for this moment of growing, but also for sharing this space with other species. And it's something we wanted to recreate in this garment, where we work with natural elements, natural fibers like sisal fibers, serge, jute, and creating directly a space garment for two persons in this case. But also, why not imagine like the garment itself has like this nest where other species like this bird could inhabit it. I'm gonna show like briefly some part of the video presentation of the collection. Okay. For me, it's very important, like to like the movements of the. Okay. Also, like we are talking about skills, we are talking about the relation through fashion and materiality with other human and non-human species. For me, it's important that like the movement of the persons, no, like the movement that they are not like a conventional runway. I mean that they incorporate subtly some movements also of another species, and how we can also show this collection not only from like the visual aspect of the garments itself, but also of the body, no, of the movement of the body, that they get a little bit, let's say, inspired by other species behavior, as well as the of course of the music and everything that goes around, let's say, a presentation and for me a performance of the concepts behind. In a way, we can use these other non-human perspectives to design. Even if we have like, let's say, a collection and a project itself, or a client, a specific client, we can make a connection with nature, with other, let's say, a post-human perspective. In this case, we had to create a cape for a special event, New Year's Eve here in Spain. And we have like it was like a show presentation in the TV, like a very popular one, that it's not as like a normal thing for us to do. And we had to kind of talk with the garment to a general public of the idea of the metamorphosis, or the idea of the change of the new year, but also in a more philosophical idea of the change that we as human species had to do to be more sensitive with the environment and the other non-human species and the relations with the others. So we try to look at other species like damselflies or dragonflies and see how their wings work, and try to collect our materials, recycling materials from other projects itself, and mix them with different techniques, more artificial ones, more natural ones, biomaterials, but also 3D printing, but also recycled plastics from architectures, and work with the idea of that if an insect would have built this cape, and like build this idea of the building with the 3D printing, hand 3D printed. Okay, so trying to collect all this materiality and this texture, infinite textures in nature, that can build, let's say, a cape where a recycled materials join, but also a 3D printed, but not like, let's say, perfection in 3D printed, but a 3D printed that was kind of inspired by like the movements of the insects and like the materials that in some cases they chew in their mouths. And creating not only a garment with a lot of work behind, of course, and material work, handwork, and also digital work, but also a place itself. a place where other non-human species could live, even a landscape. We can think also in a garment as a landscape. We can imagine this is an infinite landscape where others can inhabit, where others can create their own nest inside, where others can still be joining and adding more materiality and more texture to this garment. Like, let's say, more like an ecosystem, not like a dress. Just to finish, I'm going to read like a short tale, a fashion tale. I like to say that talks about also it was an special client that asked us to create a garment for a concert, but we also wanted to tell a story with it, to tell a story about the relation between a human and a leafy sea dragon. So I'm going to read it if you don't mind. It's short. I hope you don't fall asleep because it's a tale, but I think it's more inspired tale than a night tale. Okay. Let's say, as a consequence of accelerated climate change, we have been forced to create new forms of survival to adapt to extreme habitats. Alliances with other species have emerged. New interspecific relations are appearing, such as those of leafy sea dragon. We introduce you to leafy sea dragon. Leafy is a unique interspecies found at the intersection of a fish, a plant, and human. They move slowly, subtly, floating like a seaweed in the middle of an urban forest. They propel themselves thanks to an almost invisible fin at the edges of their neck and tail end. They are mysterious and solitary beings, but sometimes they can be seen accompanied by other close and friendly species, such as the seahorse. Despite their name, they do not spit fire like other dragons, nor they have wings, although they can fly thanks to magic. They worry about the current climate crisis. They watch over the skies, bring rain, and observe the state of the rivers and streams. They are wise, kind beings, willing to take care of the forest, seas, and cities. They are natural caretaker interspecies. In turn, they give shelter to about 120 eggs deposited in their abdominal belt. After a few weeks, the eggs hatch, they turn orange and pinkish, and a thin and shiny outer structure protects them. The egg jewel rises toward trees, algae, and rocks. Sometimes this freedom is dramatically cut short. Leafy sea dragon are exposed to very stressful situations as they feel their habitat is constantly threatened by what they call environmental predators. Certain destructive human behaviors, such as pollution and industrial waste, are behind some fires and sewerage ducts and floods stuck this one-of-a-kind species. The last extreme heat wave was about to carry away leafy sea dragon forever. After last July's heat wave, leafy remain as if it's immobile, lacking water and nutrients. Their skin turns whitish, exhausted on a burned tree. They reserve their strength until they can float again over the human forest, or the urban forest. After the first breath, their internal survival mechanisms are activated. They begin to build their own nest, a kind of tailor-made suit that protect them from predators. They recollect materials from the site and join it with the saliva, algal extracts, mineral powders, dried fruits, natural latex. They cover themselves with their newly fabricated environment. Their boundaries between their body and the outside melt away. Everything is water in this new habitat. New interspecies begin to sprout subtly in this environment. Leafy can subtly modify its skin color to get closer and empathize with new inhabitants. New symbiotic relationships emerge from these encounters. More sensitive and careful relationships with the environment, and with the others. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and practices, Raquel. So inspired. ここからは、ラケルさんのお話を
From now on, based on Raquel's story, I would like to invite Mr. Dr. Mizuno to have a dialogue in depth. But before we do that, I would like to make a comment myself. So, listening to Raquel's presentation, there is an axis called fashion, but how everything in the world connects with each other, the process of that, I felt, relates so deeply with us, and that expands our own world. I think there was a perspective as such. Yesterday, we had a session regarding a future folklore based on myth and art. And within that session, Mr. Ishikura Toshiaki said myth is a mediator of a circulation of the world. It weaves story. There's a possibility for storytelling. The masks that ancient people created would make the transformation of animism possible. That's what he mentioned in his presentation. But listening to you, Raquel, what you have been doing with the theme of fashion as well, it's a mediator between humans and the world outside of humans. And I also felt the sense of transformation in it as well. So based on all of those things, I'd like to invite Dr. Mizuno to join in the dialogue with Raquel. If you have any questions, Dr. Mizuno, to begin with. Thank you very much. Just briefly, I'd like to introduce myself. I studied fashion design in Bertin and returned to Japan after that. At that time, when I was in Bertin, in the early 2000s, there was a methodology of design, human-centric methodology, that was, for lack of better words, anthropocentric design methodology was the focus of attention around that time. That was not a bad thing, though, but in the world of fashion, the ease of use by humans was ignored, but pursuing the ideal body image was most important for designers. So, in other words, the Western model figure was a target of design of garments. That was the worldview around that time. So for overweight people or people that are too thin or disabled people, including ethnic minorities, we started to think that it's important to design for those people as well around that time. So after I returned to Japan, it's been 15 years already. In today's world, I think the issues fashion designers are facing is more complicated. When I was studying in Bertin, human-centric perspective or design methodology at the time is now found to be useless. And we are very reflective of that fact. So I wrote a book called Circular Design that's only in Japanese.
This is one of the books I wrote in quite recent years, Circular Design.
And this is called sustainable fashion or food design. This is what this book is called, food design. This is real. It's not directly related to this session, but the multi-species environment, design fabrication environment, or the information technology environment. Considering all those, we have to go beyond human-centric perspective. So that's what I have been researching vigorously nowadays. And looking at your works, Raquel, what I'm most curious about is that you share even the mistakes by natural beings. Imperfection. You share imperfection with them. Mistakes or imperfection, I would say. Imperfection is not being perfect. So they're maybe subtly different from mistakes, but still. In other words, the industrialized society that we're used to, we have artificial things, and they have to be homogeneous and mass-produced to make people's living richer. That is our target. So if we deviate from that idealistic state, the homogeneity is lost, and people think garment with a hole is imperfect. So that's a failure. That's what the tendency has been. However, you have a critical viewpoint toward such tendency. That resonated with me so much. What's important here is that is not what we aim for is not to reverse or go back to what the society used to be or industry used to be, but instead you use recycled materials and even computerized materials and materials that are close to nature, like biodegradable materials. Combining all those, you create something imperfect. That attitude, I thought, was really interesting.
This kind of attitude is, I think, Escobar design I'm having translating, which is something I am very careful about, the how high quality or mass produce or Western centered idea, the view should not the only thing that you have to be aware of. So that point of view that I was so interested in the Raquel's story or presentation. And Raquel works in Spain, and fashion design, also the architects. She's been working. And when she started, or she got some ideology, maybe unconsciously, trying to create something modern. But modern is trying to create something perfect, but her work is not trying to create something perfect, imperfect. So people would probably not kind of agree with her kind of works. So how did you kind of understand the kind of different idea that from the other people? like modern ideas.
Super interesting your question and your approach. It's true. I haven't thought that much about it. It's more unconscious when I say imperfect, perfect, and that's very interesting what you just point out. Maybe it's something that I come from architecture, and when I was studying. I mean, like when you do architecture, you plan, you do your plans, and then you like define everything perfectly, and someone else builds it. I'm telling this because for me, it has to do a little bit with the processes I'm like looking for when I work. When I try to work, I don't do it as they do, but as if I was like building a nest, because they don't like the thing is that you solve while you are building something, and you incorporate as well what we say mistakes that for me also are like opportunities, not to create something different. So I try to to work not from a point of view where you like have a sketch of the drawings and of the models and of the looks you are going to build. I mean, there is like, of course, a concept and research, but then I think I like to work with material directly and to learn from material and learn from the errors and the mistakes and see their opportunities. Many of our projects have started from a mistake. Like we were pursuing something and we got another thing. Or even, for example, I really love the mold. That when I work with bioplastic, someone tell me, oh, but it's going to create mold. It's going to, when you put poor water on it, it's going to disappear. It's going to be destroyed. But I think there is something there, no? In this like called imperfection, what we have understood by design, that is something like you control, human controls what wants, and like humans are like all the time working to get it. Although I think there is something beautiful in the not controlling, in the letting go with the flow with the material, in the letting go with the you don't have to control the material. Maybe the material also has something to tell you, and you have to. I mean, and you can be like. I mean, you can learn from it, no? Like, because if you are a lot in the controlling, maybe you are going to miss things, or you are just going to get what you already had in your mind. But if you like open this door to non-controlling, you get things you didn't know from the beginning. And I think for me that's something interesting, and I think for me I have to learn a lot more about it. And and there is something about. But I really. Yeah, I also agree with you, and I was also wanted to ask you about this idea of because I know you have also worked with a myco leather and like with the growing organisms that for me are like the next step, like super interesting. And I don't know if you have had like this sensation and like this feedback from people that they tell you, but I mean, how is it going to last, or how is it going to behave? Like I think. We sometimes with this modern idea of the perfection that you just mentioned, we have this idea also of the control. That means perfection is control, and everything is in our head and control. And these like growing materials that I know you have worked with give you another perspective that it's also more centered in the process and more centered in the changing. That for me, it's something super interesting. I don't know what you think about it.
いや、おっしゃる通りでして、
Yes, I totally agree. It's really interesting that
マテリアルパーフェクションを目指すと。
when you trying to become perfect in material perfection, the designers or the producer in this modern world, you have to have the perfect thing in the perfect timing, to deliver in perfectly. So when you have to control the natural organic flow, that you have to be governed, or governance, you have to be governance, and using the power to control and deliver things in a different way. And then I think there are two ways of the design development. One is digital development with biotechnology, and the second one is symbiotic approach, the cohabiting with the nature and the human world. So these two things are not clearly divided. And I think it's really interesting. These two directions are kind of related to each other. As Raquel said, that I make the clothes using the mushrooms. Not just the creating the clothes, but using the 3D printer. And when you want to stretch, or the places that you don't want to stretch. So when you have different kind of types of the stretched or unstretched fabric, and then making a clothes, which is wearable. And they both are not going to be perfectly created as you planned. So learning by doing from the authentic kind of conventional way, or mechanical way of learning from doing, or biomaterial, it's not growing as you expected. So you have to kind of chop the mushrooms. So as a designer or technologist point of view, that's like a biohacking way. They are kind of come and go across each other and creating a design. That is my perception of learning by doing. And in your presentation nest, that made me feel excited was creating felt, the process, or weaving a nest of the bird, like mixing different things and then kind of tangling it, is exactly the learning by doing. And the different thing is like a patternizing things. That for those who is not familiar with the fashion industry, patterning is a dressmaking making technique, which is a very modern technique.
The neck angle is almost the same for everyone. So based on that, you draw a quarter of a body, and then you draw pockets. So like a speck or drawing, you put those onto the fabric, and then you use a sewing machine to cut the fabric to create a garment. So just like you said, this is an example of a result or outcome of a controlled artificial matter. We probably didn't have to do that in the past, but creating something as a nest is totally different from this, because this can be mass-produced. This is much more efficient because, that'll benefit so many people at the same time. But the way you create garment, you do you do pattern cutting, but instead of doing that, because there is no straight line on human body, so why would you do that, So through computation, we do some simulation of natural matters or combining many different materials through learning, doing by learning. And you also mentioned saliva, which connects all those materials as a binder. So just like a bird creates or builds its nest, you take such an interesting methodology that is almost futuristic. So you're nesting as opposed to pattern cutting. What kind of new physicality, the way our bodies should be, are you thinking about to conceptualize or realize in the future?
Super interesting, this idea of instead of moving from the pattern making, traditional pattern making, that is traditional and we still use it all the time, to the nesting way of seeing it. I think for me it's super interesting, like the idea of because as you said, also the pattern making is thinking very much as you said at the beginning as well, in a standard idea of bodies and standardized bodies. But I mean, we know that there are a lot of bodies, and sometimes some people that don't fit in these strict bodies, they are a little bit out of the pattern making traditional, or you have to they are not in the traditional sizes, no, let's say. I'm not thinking that much in the idea of building from our body, but also building for our relations, like relations to materiality. We can think more like a body, let's say more, not like only the shape, but also like an ecosystem. We can think maybe in making an envelope that is an ecosystem of relations with materiality, and also more in the idea of a skin or an envelope. As you said, the body is not straight, so maybe for me it makes more sense the idea of surface of a surface of an envelope that to cover the body, that an idea of capturing like precisely, exactly a body itself, because also a body is a changing thing. Your own body changes with the years, with where you are not, with the environment, with the things, with the people that surrounds that. So for me, it's more in a skin or a second skin or an envelope or an ecosystem to establish relations with what you have, but with the other humans and with the environment, more than trying to capture again, trying to control the body that, if you think is you cannot control it. I mean, we are also like full of bacteria inside our skin, inside our body, and I mean, it's just like looking for me. But conventional pattern making is maybe looking at the body only from a very, very particular perspective and doing like a body for everyone. So maybe in the future we could think in the body as something that is alive, something that is an ecosystem, that's something that builds relations with the others, with the environment, and also like a probacterial body. No, I don't know what you think about this idea of instead of antibacterial body, a probacterial body.
これ面白いですよね。僕もそれすごい、
That is so interesting. Me too. I totally agree with you. Antimacterial concept regulates and limits the human society. And, we try to sanitize the whole city as much as possible, our living environment as clean, food as clean as possible. That's what we are trying to achieve. But we ourselves who are trying to do that are actually cohabiting with so many bacteria, not just inside, but outside of our body as well. And garments, clothes cannot be disconnected from this fact. But it looks like we're trying to disconnect our outer world from our inside. And we also use something like a mask on our face to cut our interaction with bacteria. And it also entails a risk of your own health. But not only that, you are seeing the society as something that you can control, you can regulate. That's what it's representing. So the concept of interdependency or interconnectedness is part of the theme of the session, I understand. But from other perspectives, for example, there's a field called mobility studies. I think we can also insert that concept as well, mobility studies. Root and route in our chat box, someone wrote, route and route. I think someone mentioned the difference between route and route, and I thought that was interesting. So when we try to design something, what is the source of inspiration of the design? That's what people would question. We tend to do that, and we tend to ignore the process to reach that end. So what was the root of the inspiration? But people tend to ignore the route to get to the consequence. So what kind of route did it take from the originating route to get to the point, get to where we are right now? We think we have to understand that. And this is just a temporary state that we are in right now. And through biodegradation and other things, we'll transform from now on. Or it may be transferred to someone else. Part of the garment will be transferred to someone else, and they may use it. Maybe they will be using just a part of it, or they may be using that as as a rug or something, not as a garment, but for a temporary owning and usage, the garment is used, but that's not the right way. Materials exist within the flow of history, flow of time, and we also exist in the flow of time. So a point in time and space is this should not be the focus of our thinking. We have to focus on the flow instead of just a certain point. So from that perspective, the concept of probacterial maybe is just a factor, just one small factor. And through this concept, maybe garment made up of humans and bacteria, maybe the garment will be used as bacteria's food eventually. And after that, it'll transform even further. That's what I'm expecting. So the garment transforms and transcends to another space, including all that I consider ecosystem. So based on this, the traditional fashion designers have studied something so different from what I'm saying right now. Then I think the reorientation of the concept of fashion design will be happening. I hope. Based on your talk, that's is what is happening inside of me.
Thank you so much, Dada. I would like to ask some question. When you think of the process of designing, there are different factors Raquel's artworks are very imaginative. Of course, the design related, but also the artistic kind of element your work has. So the story or concept you are building, making, how do you create them? Like a process, I'd like to hear from you, and also the comments. When you have the next show, how models can move their body, how you convey the message to the models to use their kind of physical movement. So idea of creating stories and also how you convey this.
Super interesting, the question. On the one hand, the idea, the models, I think we incorporate this idea of body design as well, not only fashion design, but body design, let's say, of movement design, because when you go to a normal fashion show and you try to say, okay, let's work in moving different, I've even heard people say, no, but models are just mannequins. I mean, they are like static. They are like, they move as they move. You are like asking for too much in this show. I've heard a lot that, but I think it's not true, because even in the fashion designers in the 90s or in the 80s, the models, for example, with Alexander McQueen's, the models move, they also perform, but now on, maybe in the 2000s, like the models are more static and they just like move as we understand a model moves, although many of them are even they know their body very well, and it's super interesting to work with them as part of the idea, no? And I work with a movement designer when I do this show, and we work with this idea of incorporating subtle differences from what we understand as normal moving, just for us, like because for me the fashion shows are a performance as well, and are atmospheric. So the movement, the music, the space itself has to talk about the same. In each step of the music, it was the step from different species, and each model has to incorporate a subtle movement that was not totally human centered, but inspired by other species. As well, this idea of the telling a story, it's super important. Even in the last project that I mentioned, the Leafy Sea Dragon, was a story itself, but it's not like it's the same. It's not like I think in the story and then we design and we build the garments, but the story gets written through the building and at the end. It was super interesting, the last one, because we were just doing some shooting, a photo shooting for the pieces. But when I received the photos, I saw a story of it that connected the process we were doing, but also with the idea that were behind the garments, that are not ideas that I have, but that the garments kind of say to us, no? And also the story is not a real story, it's not something that is a biological story of the Leafy Sea Dragon itself, but it's something that it's also imaginary. We are like mixing what is real and what is fantasy to tell a story about sustainability. It's not true that some facts of the story, but they are like a mix between what is biological, what is like facts, what are like facts of the Leafy Sea Dragon itself, but also with an atmospheric idea of a future or futuristic idea idea of what is imaginary. I think it's super interesting to mix what is real and not real, because sometimes we just give credit to what is real, and mixing it can take you to another places, kind of.
Thank you so much. Imaginary and the reality, and the combination of them is a very typical thing related to this session. Throughout session, the nest of the bird is like you choose the color and then you choose the birds choose the color and then making the nest. So bringing your artwork, picking up not just the nature but also artificial things like plastics, which was not happening in the ancient time. But our reality is not just the natural resources, but also the artificial resources that we are kind of using, right? So you are combining both things as our reality right now. And also the technology and science, as Mizuno-san said, that they are not control, not a contradiction, but it's a part of the species or the living things. So this is like a deepening this forum. And a question from me is like to both of you, but we tend to divide two things like technology or science and nature. How do you accept these different things as a kind of same quality, the same level? What kind of intention that we can have, or how we can be conscious about accepting two different things seems very different or contradictional things. How do you accept these things, two different things?
じゃあ、そうですね。テクノロジー、サイエンスっていう
The technology or science, the information technology that I was talking about, and the informational technology, and then creating like a steel stuff, or firing, or weaving, or creating like a pottery. And these are the stories that you can find very, very ancient storybooks, historical books. And when you see them, that you can understand. But the informational technology is not visible. When you talk about like people like a GAFA making a lot of money, doing something invisible, and destroying like a digital technology, these people are in our modern world. But understanding the resource or origin of our lives, or learning what we can learn from the microorganism, like Okamizaki or other people, understanding the importance of the our lives or beings. Just like Aristotle Lindenmayer, that they are creating the technology they created a system to spreading the branches kind of approach. They are trying to understand the origin of the lives or species. So we don't have to be afraid of understanding or taking these two different kind of things. So we can be good friends of these people who is paying attention of different directions to create the new ecosystem. Thank you very much. We're running out of time, so I would like to close the session now. And we're going to start a reflective talk session later. So during this dialogue, that we can deepening this conversation with the other guest members. Thank you so much for very exciting and interesting talk from both of you. The artificial matters and material and the physical body and technology and lives. So many different aspects that you have been connecting and then opening our eyes widely and deeply. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. ありがとうございました。Thank you.